policy.
NATO, President Trump says he's losing patience with American allies and considering a large-scale withdrawal of U.S. troops from Germany.
Oh, wait, this is interesting. Oh, so
help me.
So
out.
Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Wait, Manafort was working against NATO for Vladimir Putin's.
Right.
Wait, but now Donald. He keeps attacking NATO too.
Weird, but he's going to have this summit with Putin.
Yeah, but he doesn't do well at summit.
Well, they like to talk offside, you know.
Because
like,
NATO summits always go really badly, don't they? He always attacks our NATO allies, doesn't he, Richard? But I mean, how weird is this that Paul Manafort was doing Putin's bidding, and now it looks like Donald Trump is, I'm sure he doesn't mean to, but he's just bumbling into this, doing Vladimir Putin's bidding by constantly attacking NATO allies and constantly defending Vladimir Putin, saying he should be in the G8, saying that maybe Russia should we should recognize the invasion of Crimea.
What also Donald Trump seems to be missing is the idea that NATO and American military presence and support for NATO is not a favor we bestow on Europeans.
Right.
It's an act of strategic philanthropy.
Right.
It is an act of American self-interest. It's born of the historic lesson that the balance of power in Europe is vital to the security of the United States. So I'm not going to sit here this morning and say certain European countries shouldn't be spending more or spending differently on defense. Of course they should. But this administration has not positioned itself as a friend of Europe, where it can basically say, we face common threats and we all need to be doing more. But to simply threaten that we would do less and we'll take our troops back home if they don't do more against the backdrop of the last year and a half is piling on.
You bring up a great point. It's in our best interest. I remember answering a question. Somebody said we had in one of my first debates, televised debates, somebody said we have responsibility as citizens of the world. I said, I'm not taking an oath as a citizen of the world. I'm taking an oath as somebody that wants to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. I care about America. And then went on and talked about, you know, Mika, you could talk about the Marshall Plan. You could talk about NATO. These are, yes, I would like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. I would also like the United States of America to dominate the world militarily, economically, and every other way. And from the Marshall Plan forward to NATO to everything we're doing in Europe, we're not doing it because we're nice guys. We're not doing it because we're good people. We're doing it because it's in America's best interest, and it has been in America's best interest. And I can show you that chart again. I mean, it takes me a while. I never took stats class, and but this is GDP. This is from 45 to 2018. This is what's happened because of American policy.
That's Steve Ratner level chart.
This is well, they got to show it. This is Steve Ratner level chart. This is what's happened to America in the post-war world we created with NATO, with even the United Nations, with all the things that we have done. We alone, because there's no other country on the planet whose economy has grown up like that nonstop since '45, other than us.
Okay, just very quickly, what Donald Trump's basic view of the world is that what we've spent on defense has come at the expense of what we've been able to accomplish here at home. What your chart is showing that what we spent on defense has actually enabled what we've done here at home.
By the way, and we're spending about 3% right now on defense, 3.5% on defense, on national defense.
Far below our Cold War average.
Yeah. Far below.
With that all in mind, the New York Times reports that President Trump sent sharply worded letters to a number of foreign leaders lambasting them for failing to meet security obligations. The letters, which were sent in June, went to the leaders of Germany, Belgium, Norway, and Canada, among others. In his note to Chancellor Merkel, Trump said it's, quote, increasingly difficult to justify to American citizens why some countries do not share NATO's collective security burden while American soldiers continue to sacrifice their lives overseas.
As do Canadians, as do Australians, as do Germans, as do the Brits, as do a lot of our allies.
So they'll get that letter. Okay. According to the New York Times, Belgium's prime minister reacted tartly last week to the letter, telling reporters that he was not very impressed by it. I think some might be laughing. Two diplomatic sources tell the Times that a dozen letters may have been sent in all.
Let's bring in right now former
Christine
NATO.
Lagarde's face says it all.
Yeah, it really does. Let's bring in former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, now the Dean of the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University, and Chief International Security and Diplomacy Analyst for NBC News and MSNBC, retired four-star Navy Admiral James Stavridis. Unfortunately, after that introduction, we have no time for questions. Thank you for being with us, Admiral.
He's got a lot
He's a
what a
guy.
What a pleasure.
Most importantly, he's from Jacksonville. So, Admiral, I'm sure your job when you were doing what you were doing was, yes, to worry about our NATO allies. But as I was saying, your first responsibility was to the United States of America and what was in our best interest. Talk about how NATO has long been, a strong NATO has long been in America's best interests, and any concerns you might have with these letters attacking our NATO allies.
Well, let's start with the fact that during the 4 years I was Supreme Allied Commander, I watched so many European troops die in Afghanistan under my command, alongside U.S. troops. So they are in this with us, with blood and with treasure, as the saying goes. And let's just kind of do the numbers on the defense spending thing. So the U.S. spends $600 billion a year on defense. China spends about $250 billion, less than half. Russia spends about $80 billion. How much do those freeloading Europeans spend? They spend almost $300 billion a year on defense. They are the second largest defense budget in the world collectively.
So you're saying this? I'm sure this is a surprise to a lot of people. Europe spends more on national defense, on the defense of their interests and our interests than China and Russia.
Absolutely correct. And we ought to just keep that in mind. Now, as Richard said, and he's right, we want to see them come up to 2% of defense spending. That would be a positive thing. But yelling at them publicly, which is essentially what we're doing with these letters, is not going to help that cause. What we should do is criticize privately and in public talk about the value of this alliance. And by the way, when we talk about withdrawing U.S. troops from Europe, we had, again, let's do the numbers. In the Cold War, we had 400,000 troops in Europe. Today, we have 35,000. There's been a 90% decline. Those troops are there operating on forward stations for our benefit to go into Afghanistan, Libya, the Balkans, places where we have legitimate security interests. So this canard that somehow the Europeans are freeloaders and are not part of our most valuable asset in the world, which is our network of alliances around the world, we throw that away at great peril, and these kind of letters just not helpful.
No.
Heidi, I've got to believe on the Hill, this is certainly one policy of Donald Trump's that even the most steadfast Trump supporters have to raise their eyebrows about, have to be concerned about, have to understand that, you know, our allies, our European allies, are on our side and shouldn't be poked at by Donald Trump.
This is the traditional Republican coalition, another stool of this, a leg of the stool getting kicked out from beneath the GOP. And of course they're upset because it's part of a broader disintegration of our relations with Europe right now, and all of our trade allies, actually. On the Hill, as you saw, Senator Corker tried to get some kind of a coalition together to stop the president from imposing the tariffs. And now, at the same time that these letters, or that the reports about the letters are coming out, we see that this trade war is really starting to escalate. Just in the past week, we have China clapping back. We have the Canada clapping back, and the biggest one of all that could really start to take this south is Europe, now talking about getting together a coalition of trading partners to clap back at the amount of about $290 billion in trade. And Joe, we're not just hearing from the traditional GOP dissenters like Jeff Flake and Bob Corker about this. Behind the scenes, there are a number of Republicans from farm states, dairy states, includes folks like Senator Joni Ernst, who've been quietly trying to lobby the White House. The committees of Agriculture, Finance have all tried to appeal to him, but to no avail. And that's why quietly a number of them are saying, hey, it's really unfortunate, but maybe this is just going to take some kind of a jolt in the stock market or something to stop the president from escalating this further.
All right, Admiral Heidi, stay with us. We want to continue this conversation and get the Admiral's thoughts on the president's comments yesterday about his trade war. Emily Jane Fox, thank you very much for your reporting on Michael Cohen. Keep us posted. Also, still ahead on Morning Joe, last week we weren't getting clear information about the kids separated from their parents. Now we're not getting any information at all, as if we're going to stop asking. The latest in the government's shade campaign on its own border policy. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.